Hey there YouTube, it's Petey Two Finger, and today I got a package in the mail. We're going to do a little unboxing and take a look at what's in here. So there's a staple, and I do not want to have that end up in my foot or any other part of my body. So this is an anti-static bag, and here we have tpa3116 D2 amp board. This is the XHM543, and this one I don't want to speak too soon. This one doesn't have anything funky. The last one that I got didn't work. The last one of these that I got one channel did not pass signal. So these cost they're maybe like $6 or $7 shipped. And going over, we have a power input here. So this green spot here, there's two screws on the top, and those screws will open up a wire clasp. So you loosen up the screws, and that lifts up a little metal grabber in here. And it's marked on the left. It says VCC, and that's the positive voltage input, and on the right is GND, and that's the ground. So you can test these with a 9-volt battery. They'll pass signal. The maximum voltage for this board is somewhere right around 24 volts. And if you run this board at 24 volts with a 4 ohm load, it's rated at 100 watts. I think it's 50 by 2 or 60 by 2. I think this is 120. So there's, to go over the tour, here's the voltage input here. Here are the speaker outputs. There's one here and one here. And if you're looking at it from the top, again, the connection posts that are on the left side are the positive. So we have positive, minus, speaker out, positive, and minus. And then the audio input is this white rectangle here. So you can see this connector here has a black ground in the center and then a white and a red respectively. And this is how we get our audio in to the amplifier. So you can cut this and prepare it, tin the 3 wires, and then solder them to a. If you're doing this work, it's nice to have a 3.5 millimeter, 3.1 millimeter. It's just like a line level audio, male stereo, like a Walkman jack is what I call it. It's nice to have one of those for testing, so when this comes in, you can hook it up and do a test. So I'm going to do that, and maybe what I'll do is I'll film that test so you guys can see exactly how I do that, and that'll be in another video. But the other way that you can do it, rather than using this terminal here or these green terminals, is you can flip the board over and solder your wires directly to the back of the board. And I do that a lot. Typically, the procedure for that is to, number one, add a small amount of paste flux to the existing connection, apply the iron, and then apply the solder, my solder. The stuff that I have here, it has more lead in it. It's just better quality for through hole type of work or tacking wires on the back than what is used in mass quantity by the manufacturers who may be using a different method of applying this solder, and it's a different type of solder. It doesn't stick as well. It needs a little higher temperature to melt. So anytime I'm dealing with a fresh solder point, that's the first thing that I'll do, is apply some flux and then apply some of my solder. And once it's got that stuff on there, you don't want to have a huge ball of it. So you can do your best to remove a mixture of what you've added and then that old stuff, the existing. But yeah, that's how you do it. Now there is a little bit of mung on here. I'm gonna try cleaning this up a little bit. These amp boards, I used to pay $5 shipped for them, and you could just as soon get like people like to build tiny giant or little cricket, these LM386 based amps. So when you graduate from doing that, this is one way you can go, is to use these boards. It's kind of a cop-out. You're not building it from scratch. This is just the power amp, so you can build a preamp for this. And if you're interested for guitar, for a 6-string guitar, one of the things that I have done, like any multi-effector is going to serve just fine as a preamp. You don't need anything. You could put this in a box, get a laptop power supply, like if you could find one that's 24 volts, 10 amps, that's ideal. And then have this inside of a 1590 BB with a stereo input or a pair of inputs and a pair of outputs, and run those outputs to your like monitor speaker type solution, you know, full range, flat response, or guitar speakers. You can do whatever you want. I've done it all different ways. I've been doing this for years, since like 2008. I've been doing this, and there's loads of footage of me playing through this type of thing on this channel. If you type in remote into the search bar, there'll be videos that will come up from remote music days where we're playing through this type of thing here. So yeah, they're efficient, meaning they don't require a real lot of current. So we've been able to use 18650 rechargeable lithium-ion batteries to power our rigs. Those look like this. So taking a look on here, this chip here, is that it's a TL074, which is a quad op amp. So yeah, there is a built-in bit of a preamp on this board. There's two potentiometer trimmer pots on the board, and merely turning them all the way up is one way to defeat that. Looking on the back here, you'll see two triangle points, sets of 3. The middle 3, that's the input. That's the input there. The center is the ground, and then on the right and the left are the right and left channels. The connections above that, there's a couple of capacitors. Those are more than likely decoupling caps on the input. Maybe. Don't quote me. One of the things you can do is remove these two trimmer pots. I like to get in there with a nippers and snip and just remove them, and then put the there's 3 connections for each trimmer, okay, which a trimmer is a pot. That's what it is. And you can see there the triangle, there's 2 triangles here. So you can come in and snip and pull that off of there. And this is where it's nice to have a second person. So I'll have my partner come in and press down on the board and have a needle nose pliers. Come in with one of these and grab on to the leg, and then I'll go underneath there or on the side with a really hot iron, like a 60 watt, and make contact with it, and that'll melt it, and then it'll come right out. So you don't have to, you can leave those in there. You just got to make sure that if you're going to reheat those pads, that they don't all of a sudden move over and make contact with its partner. So it's nice to remove them, but the point being, we're trying to not lift traces. That's always the goal when we're dealing with heating pads on a board that's been manufactured to be the part installed once and then not messed with. That's what this was made for. This wasn't made to have the parts being jockeyed in and out of it, because what will happen is the copper will lift. It will lift up, and then you can run a jumper wire. You can cut in your own little piece of wire to compensate for that copper that tore, but it's not recommended. So what I like to do, looking at these, I would say from left to right, this here is 1, then going up to 2, and then down to 3. And same thing, moving over. Going left to right, you would have 1, and then going up to 2, up to 2, and then down to 3, lastly. These say 103 on them. Donna, look up 103 potentiometer. It's a 10 kb. So there's 2 ways I like to do this. 103 potentiometer. It should say that it's a 10K.
Yeah.
Okay, so by looking at the number on this part, it says 103 on it. We've determined that it's a 10K pot, 10KB. B means linear, not logarithmic. So there's 2 ways you can deal with these board-mounted volume controls, all right? You can get 2 10KB pots, and like I just showed you, 1, 2, 3, you solder a wire from each one of these points and connect them to the points 1, 2, and 3 on each pot. And then you mount that on the front panel of your device, and you'll have a right channel volume and a left channel volume. The other way is you can get a stereo pot that has 6 connections. So it's a single shaft running through 2 potentiometer assemblies. And in this case, it's 6 wires, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and you solder those respectively to your control, your stereo or your dual concentric potentiometer. And then you'll have a single master volume knob for your power amp. Okay, so that's what I like to do. It's a good idea to test it beforehand, make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to. Like I kind of went long on this, talking about it. If you have any questions, be nice, and do whatever I can do to. I'll type a way too long answer, and then you'll never respond back to it. But we've had really good luck with these. Like, they do what they're supposed to do. We haven't had a real lot of them show up that don't work, but we have had them surprise us. So I'm going to do another video right now. I'm going to set this up and test it, and we will see. It's not going to be a real hi-fi, like, ooh, listen. The speakers that I'm going to be using are bass guitar speakers. I got a pair of 8s and some subwoofer cabinets, Eminence 8-inch speakers. So there's no treble or mid-range. It's just going to be kind of a little bassy sounding, maybe a little boomy. But the point isn't, oh wow, listen to how nice this sounds. In order for me to do that, I would use speakers that have a crossover and represent the entire frequency spectrum. But we are merely quickly testing this to determine, is it working, and at that point I can move on and install it into its permanent home, which is going to be in a bass amplifier. Would you hand me that amp? Please.
Over here?
Oh no, I'm sorry, honey. The amplifier that we're building.
This?
That. Yeah. And then maybe we could set up a test table. So yeah, here is the amp. It's this is the stereo potentiometer, the 10K pots. And then we have bass. It's like bass, mid-range, treble, and gain here. Here are the inputs. There's 2 power switches. One turns on the preamp, and the second one turns on the power amp. And the speaker outputs are here. There's 2 fuses because there's 2 power sections. One is 2 batteries, the other is 6 batteries. So it's 24 volts and then 8 volts. 8.5 volts for the preamp and the LEDs, the 24 volts for the power amp. So honestly, if you want to come on here and trash talk me and attack me because I'm using this stuff, my whole approach with this has never been anything having to relate to tone. Okay? We live in an apartment, which means we can't crank up our amps, which we own amps. I have a hand-wired, all-tube JTM 45 that I'm looking at right here. But we can't take that amp out into the remote, into the woods, the wilderness, and there's nowhere to plug it in. So I'm looking for a battery-powered solution to let me push some air. And people want to take a dump on Class D, which is what this amp is. It's a Class D amp board. And what that means is that it's 93% efficient, meaning we're able to run it off batteries. So This is a battery-powered solution that when we set up our gear, our Class D rig, and play through it, it sounds really good. It doesn't sound harsh or brittle or bad. It sounds really good. Now, could it sound better? Oh yeah, it could sound better. It could. I'm sure it could. If we had AC power and we had a real legitimate rig, but this is more of like slumming it. If you get what I'm saying, this is like we're making do. But in that, Donna, do you feel there's any audio compromise on our setup because we have to use Class D? Has anyone ever said, what have people said to us? Like last year we went out, one day it was weird, 11 people came up to us.
Well, most people say it sounds good. Other people are like surprised at what, like it's all just battery and you don't have anything plugged in because they can't tell the difference.
Well, my recollection of it is everyone was overwhelmingly saying how good we sounded.
Yeah, I said that. That was the first thing I said.
Yeah, they were like... So if people don't know and they're actually there at the remote, and we're talking complete strangers, and this was like an old people walking place. It was like a soccer field where elderly people live in this retirement thing or whatever it was. So there was 3 grannies that came up and told us how good we sounded. And the one guy played sax and flute in the Pink Floyd cover band. And he was like, how are you doing this? Because he knows there's no outlet. And I explained, well, it's Class D. I think it sounds great. There's a whole group of people that'll tell you that it's harsh, that the D is digital and it's bad. There's no analog to digital conversion, like zeros and ones. That does not come into play with Class D. Even though it's called Class D and the D stands for digital, there's no conversion, okay? So if you're coming at me to say I'm bad and I'm a goof and tubes sound better, you're right. You're right. But where I will disagree with you is, do they really sound better, or is it just different? Because that's my takeaway of it, is that the tube distortion is good for some things, and in small doses it can be pleasant. And yes, it does have a flavor. But it's not the end-all be-all for me. It really isn't. And I hear groups like the Black Keys. I hear their mixes and I hear how they've processed everything to emphasize tape saturation and even order harmonic saturation through tubes. And I hear when that's overdone, that to me it's not pleasant. It's not pleasing to my ear. I get what they're trying to do, and that's fine. That's cool. But it's not really for me. It's not like, for me, I would like the sound of the band to be reproduced without distortion, to sound clean and crisp. And that's what we get from this. So, is this the best thing in the world? No. Is this the best thing in the world for my application? Yeah, it is. There's nothing that can touch this. And it might not always be this board. Like in our main rig, it's a 3-channel amp. The amp is it's like this big, or that's like this. You know, this is much bigger, and a lot of that is the larger heat sink. But that particular one was $54, and it has 3. It's a 300 watt amp for the subwoofer channel for the bass, and then 150 per channel for the right and left. And that's what our speakers are rated at. They're rated at 150. And we run that at a higher voltage. It's 36 volts or 42, something like that. And it sounds really good. It really does. That's the best sounding one, the most powerful one that we have. That's the one that sounds the best. We've never turned it up really loud. We've gotten it loud, you know, but we don't really push it so much, you know. I mean, if you were there, you'd think, yeah, it's loud. It sounds like a band. You know, so to be able to pull that type of thing off with something that you're paying just a little bit of money for, like this is $5-6, and it's going to be the heart of this amp. That's going to be running 2 8s for the bass. That's unbelievable. $6 for this, so. It's to me, arguing and getting hung up on what does it sound like when you're there and you hear it, it doesn't sound like anything. It's not like, oh my goodness, that's Class D. Like you can tell. It just sounds good. It doesn't sound harsh. It doesn't sound too bright. It doesn't sound too dull. It doesn't sound too bassy. You know, and again, all of that would be really depending on how I set the mixing board. But at the end of the day, it just sounds really good. And there really isn't another option to get this amount of power from a small power supply. So it's really a no-brainer thing, and for people to get on a high horse, it tells me one thing, and that's that they don't know what they're talking about. Because if you were in this situation and you've done the legwork and you built the device and you tried it out, you went out to a remote. You know, because like I've used these for a 5-piece band and built each instrument their own stereo amp rig with one of these at the heart of it. And shot that many times, many videos. Then I've done it the other way, where we run everything into the mixer and have one really big power amp and do it that way. And I know what the difference is. I know what do I prefer. And honestly, there is something ideally what I really would do is have each person pushing air and then have the PA, like double up on it. But I never got that. You know, we don't have a semi, we have a little Toyota that everything loads up into. So I can't apologize and be like, I'm sorry I use Class D, guys. I'm sorry I don't have tube amps for you out in the woods running off of batteries. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like at that point, what am I doing? Am I doing a science fair project or am I making music? Because yeah, tubes are cool. They are. I know what tube breakup sounds like. Trust me, I have enough tube gear here to know what it does and how you can apply it. And it's just not necessary. You don't need that anymore. Yes, you used to need it. But now they've figured out how to digitally model it well enough to where I don't miss it. It's a complete. The only time I have to think about this is when I make a video and I want to show something that I think could be helpful to someone. But at the same time, I have to talk for another hour to protect myself because of some person who has never gone through the legwork to build and to experiment and to learn is going to come at me with an attitude based out of fear and insecurity and stuff that is hearsay from other comment sections on YouTube or on Facebook. Because that's where that gear snobbery and like taking shots at people like, well, you don't really count because you're some kid in the bedroom with the Line 6. If you were a big boy, like, you know, whatever band with all their tube amps, and it's like that has nothing to do with making music. That's gear snobbery. And it's fine. There's nothing wrong with loving your gear. If you are in love with your rig and you're excited about it, it's going to do something for you. It's going to make you play differently. And that's awesome, and I'm all for it. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be an old AM radio with a 1.5 volt battery that you converted. If it's giving you your mojo, if it's giving you your thing, doesn't matter what it is. So it's not so much about that stuff as some people try to make it out that it is. And I really think that for a huge percentage of people, that this is an excuse. That they can say, well, I don't have a Vox AC30 tube amp, so I could never really get that Brian May thing. You know, I wanna do what Brian May did on the solo of Bohemian Rhapsody. But I don't have that stuff, so that lets me off the hook. Well, I don't have to try. And me, where I'm at is, well, it's a little bit beyond that. Meaning, I gave up on trying to ape other people's sounds a long time ago because I can't. So I write my own music. And to me, that's beyond that. To me, that it's the next step, because I have to be brave and put myself out there and push myself to come up with something new, and then put it all together in a way that's packageable, and try to capture that. Those processes, They're infinitely much more work and chance involved in that. So it's just way beyond that process of trying to copy something that's already been done. Because really, that idea is, well, you get enough money to buy the gear, and then you practice and learn the part. And it's all there for you. You just have to obtain it. So are we musicians? Are we creating, or are we collecting? Are we hoarding and obtaining and collecting? You know, and it's not for me to say what's right for where your path is. I know what my path was, and part of it was playing other people's music. That was part of it. That's part of my path as a musician. And at some point when I was younger, I came to these realizations that I'm never going to be able to do this. You know, I'm not Jimmy Page. I'm not David Gilmour. And I have a horrific disability. I cut my fingertips off in an accident. So I can only fret with 2 fingers. So it's to compare this little $5 thing that's going to push my speakers with some unbelievably expensive $3,000 to $5,000 tube amp. You would have to be completely off your rocker to think that you could even compare those. And yet people are going to go, well, I see what that guy's doing and it's cute. But a tube amp is that's really what you need for rock and roll. So by making that statement, that means I should never be allowed to experience that. Because I don't have enough money to buy my own house. I don't have a basement where I can crank it up and, not have the police show up. So that means I'm just SOL. So I found my way to do it. My way to do it is Class D. That has nothing to do with tubes. And at some point, I've talked about this stuff so much. If you make a comment in the comment section, I've made this the focus of, I've talked about this stuff more than I've talked about what's close to my heart, which is making this music that we do. So if you're going to come here and make one of those comments, it's obvious to both of us that you're just a troll, that you're just trying to get a reaction out of me, and I'm not going to tolerate that. So that's why when people say stuff like this, I'll either let you have it back and say something rude, or I'll just shadow ban you. And I know that on YouTube, when you do that, you're never going to be a big time YouTuber, that people are going to look down at you, and I don't care, because I'm not here necessarily to be a big time YouTuber. I'm here so I can keep track of my little accomplishments and my projects and my music, and that's really kind of for me. So I can't apologize for using Class D technology. I never said it was better than tube. Never said that. Okay. In one way, it's better than tube technology, and that's its efficiency. And it's way better because if I could build tube amps and run them off of these batteries, that's what I would be doing. So we're all on the same team, you know. There's no reason to get upset at me because I built a battery amp. There's no reason for you to. If anything, you have all four of your fingers, right? So I expect to see some impressive results directly related to your non-lacking of extraneous digital ends. Anyway, you guys, this one was way too long. I'm going to hop over there and get some work done. You guys take care of yourselves. Hug your pets and peace.